All right, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight for a talk with Terri Friedman and Kathy Butterly on the occasion of Terri Friedman's solo exhibition, Rewire, curated by Kathy Butterly and on view at Q Art Foundation through September 29th. My name is Lily Hearn Foundation, and I'm the programs manager at Q. To start, I have a few housekeeping notes. First, this event is being recorded, so please turn off your video and rename yourself using an alias if you'd like to protect your privacy. Please keep your mic muted throughout the event to ensure the best audio experience for everyone. Unfortunately, due to a technical glitch with the Zoom platform, our live captions are cutting in and out this evening, but they are available hopefully for the whole night. If you click on the CC closed caption button at the bottom of your screen and select show subtitles, you should be able to view these, but they may not show up for the entire talk. We sincerely apologize about that, and we will caption and post this recording to our website as soon as we can. Finally, there will be a short Q&A period after the discussion during which you may type your questions into the chat for Terri and Kathy, or if you'd prefer to ask a question yourself, please use the raise hand function and one of us will unmute you. Before I hand it over to Terri and Kathy, I wanted to note that Terri's exhibition was originally scheduled to open in early April of 2020 and was delayed 5 months due to the pandemic. We are all so grateful to finally have been able to open this show on September 2nd. Thank you to Terri and Kathy for your flexibility and perseverance as we work to reschedule the exhibition. And a big thank you to all of you who have come to see us at the gallery since we have reopened. It means a lot to us to have our doors open again and to be able to welcome our community back into our space. For those of you who have not yet had a chance to see the show and are interested in visiting us, please take a look at our new visitor health and safety protocols on our website, and don't hesitate to reach out with any questions or concerns. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Terri Friedman and Kathy Butterly.
Hi. Let's see.
Hi, Terri.
Thank you, Lily. I'd like to just start, and I just wanted to say thank you to Lily and Josie for all the hard work they put in, for Karina for her work and support, and especially for Kathy, who invited me to do this show. So I feel very grateful, and it's been a really bumpy, crazy ride, and it's amazing the show actually was installed. So thank you all. Kathy, should I show images? Should I start the screen share?
Sure, or yes.
Let's start there. Okay. Great. So this is, Kathy, do you want me, I can talk, or do you want to ask me questions?
I guess my question first is, do you want to click through the show first and then talk about it, or talk about it individually?
I think maybe individually. I mean, we can go a little slower, or although nobody's seen it. Let's just go individually. I think that's better, spend a little time.
Okay, so I also just first want to just do a little intro of thank you to the Q Foundation. This was a really amazing experience for me because I got to know a lot, I got to learn a lot about Terri and her process, and she's become a very dear friend of mine now. And I also want to show the viewers, can you see this beautiful catalog? An amazing catalog that was made by the Q Foundation for Terri's show. It's stunning. And so there was so much work that went into this whole endeavor, and I'm really grateful to be a part of it. And I thank everybody at the Q for it, for this opportunity. I first became aware of Terri's work, was it in 2016, Terri?
I think so, yeah.
So I became aware of your work, and I was, I instantly gravitated to you and your work because first of all, I love the color and I love the detail, and I love what you're saying, and I'd never seen anything like it before. So I always wanted to curate a show at Q. So I knew that hopefully someday you would be the person that I would have a chance to show. So yay, I'm glad it happened. I thought also I just wanted to get into a little bit of your history to start out with, because you did not start out doing what you're doing now. You started out for most of your, career as a painter and sculptor, installation artist. And from what you were telling me, you had never done any textile or weaving or three-dimensional painting like what you're doing now until you went to Barcelona, Spain, and you went to the Moreau Museum, where at the time you were doing your paintings and installations, and then you saw Moreau's tapestries and like the lightning bolts, you got the idea, like, I have to do this. I have to change what I'm doing. I want to weave. I want to do textile. I want to do three-dimensional woven paintings. I want to make sculptural paintings. So I thought maybe you want to go into that a little bit, because from where I'm coming from, that was really an extreme thing to do and very brave to kind of like, you were known for what you were doing, and you just saw these, beautiful tapestries and said, I need to stop what I'm doing, and I'm going to change the trajectory of what I'm doing, and I'm going to learn how to use a warp, and I'm going to learn how to weave. You learned everything mid-career, and I think that's so brave. So I just want to hear a little bit of that part of you.
Wow. Well, everything you said, thank you so much, Kathy. I don't know where to start. Yes, so 2013, I was in Barcelona with my family for my mom's birthday, and a dear friend of mine, Steve Trujillo, was with us. And we went into the foundation, and there was this huge wall-sized hairy tapestry, and Steve, who's a fashion designer, looked at me and we're like, we have to do this. We have to make huge hairy work. And so it kind of got embedded. I don't know if it was an epiphany, but it was like, oh, I've got to try this. And then I went back to California, where I teach at California College of Arts, and took a class in weaving. I learned how to weave, and got a loom and just started weaving. And then 2 years later, Larry Rinder came to my studio and asked me to do an art wall. So the idea of actually doing a large mural, which was bigger than Miro's, it was 60 feet by 20 feet, multi-panels, kind of got me excited about doing large kind of woven murals. And then I thought, I think it was risky, but I think my work has always been about kind of, my process and my path has always been about trying new things and exploring and stretching. And that's kind of been my process as an artist. That's kind of that's how I work. That's my mode of working. So I like to, in a spirit of play, kind of experiment. And so the loom became another kind of way to experiment. And also, I'm a rule breaker. I don't like to follow rules. So anything I learn, I like to break the rules. And so I kind of do what you're not supposed to do, and traditionally. And I think that's, again, in a spirit of play and just experimenting. So it gets me into trouble, but it's also what I enjoy doing and kind of what calls me.
So another thing about your way of being like breaking the rules is your work is huge, and it's larger than a loom, and your process is not typical. It's really loopy, like literally loopy, and I've been to your studio, and your studio's, it's a great studio. It's not as big as one would think with these works. So you want to talk about that, like the limitations, or actually you do not see the size of your loom as a limitation. You probably see it as a challenge to push you further in making your works how you need them. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, yes and no. I would love to have a humongous studio, but I'm in California, and this is the studio I have in my front yard, and it's been beautiful, and it's close by. My commute is very lovely. Yes, I have not let it stop me. Would I love to have a huge studio with 20-foot ceilings? That would be amazing, maybe someday. But right now, it is a challenge, and it's more like I don't let it stop me, but I would love to have 5 people helping me and have a wall-sized, tapestry loom. But yeah, it's not stopping me from doing the size that I want and figuring out as a puzzle how to do it. Yeah, so yes, my studio is very small considering the work is very large. And when I did the Berkeley piece that was 60 feet long, I had to hang it outside my studio and stand up on my porch and look down on it to see if it actually worked. So, I mean, as artists, we all do what we can. We're all economical. We use the space and the tools and the materials we have. So, yeah.
So another thing, when I think about your work also is, it's so, it looks so incredibly actively intuitive. Like when I first saw your work, I thought, oh, there's so much energy. They're so wild. She must be, you know, making these things on, you know, as she's working on them. And then you really corrected me and said, no, everything's pre-planned, because when you work on a loom, you have to calculate how much material you need and, you know, what colors you're going to use. And so what I find just so utterly intriguing about your work is that they are so fresh and they're so alive and they're pre-planned. So how do you get that that energy in them through such a I mean, your process is laborious. It takes forever. So they're so alive. So talk about that.
We will. So this piece, just for dimension, this is about 12 feet high by 80 inches wide, something like that, or 75 inches. Yes, so everything is planned to the point where I had a model of the gallery and I knew in the back wall I needed an acid yellow piece, I think in color, a lot like you, Kathy. And I needed an acid yellow piece. I knew what my show was about, rewiring the brain and this neuroplasticity and healing trauma and repairing. And I knew that, and kind of antidotes to anxiety. So yeah, they were, I mean, weaving is so unforgiving for those who don't weave. You start at the bottom and you go up, and it's like a digital printer. You cannot go back. So I always, in the way I used to work, you could always go back and rearrange and add paint or move things around. And with weaving, you really can't. So you have to, these are completely scripted and drawn out. And yet I know, for instance, I know like this is going to be acid yellow and this is going to be ochre. And then where I have spontaneity is that I have 6 different kinds of ochre in that, or I have, one thing that a lot of the new work does is the back or the warp is prominent. Often in tapestry, it's just weft based where you don't see the vertical lines. And so that was also planned, where I knew that there would be aspects of plaid or stripes poking through to create dimension. So they become more sculptural, and there'd be holes where light could come through, or like orifices, or, you know, yeah. So very scripted.
So I want to point something out to you, is that like when you started talking about your the installation, you said, well, I knew I had to have acid yellow on the back wall, and I knew I had to have this color. And so color is like really clearly important to you, but you knew why you needed a color in a certain place, and why. Like, what is acid yellow to you, and like why are you choosing the colors that you're choosing? Like if we were at a time of like, you know, world harmony, would your palette be different?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a good question. Maybe not. Maybe it would be dark. I knew that I wanted, it's a small, hue is relatively small, and I wanted something overpowering and really hot and bright and happy on the back wall. But I also wanted, this piece says inhale X. So this is a breathing piece, inhale, exhale, kind of based on some pillows that I made for a collector who's on this call. So this is inhale X, and I wanted to do a big breathing piece because breathing, the breath is an antidote to anxiety. So the piece is a lot of anxiety, but the antidote is to breathe, which brings you to the present moment. And it's impossible to be anxious in the present because it's fearful. So I knew that I wanted yellow, kind of green yellow, because it's very acidic, and I wanted, it's kind of anxious, but also happy. So that was the back wall. I can go on to the side wall. And I knew that I wanted my hot fire pink pieces on the right, and I can talk more about those, but I kind of knew, I don't like, oh, it's something Kathy and I talked about, and my mother's also on the call. My mother was an interior designer, and in my childhood, she matched everything for her clients, and I had to unmatch or mismatch. So I think there's a part of me that is still driving to have relationships between pieces that where they don't match, but they have a conversation. So I don't know, I went a little beyond your question. I don't know if I answered it.
Yeah, so we're looking at the piece If Only, and that was made in 2020. And something that I just saw this piece for the first time today, because you made a lot of work since I went to your studio. And what I noticed from a year ago until now is your work has loosened up so much and gotten much more complicated at the same time. So it's loose and more complicated. And in this piece in particular, I really was really pulled in and just loving these moments of, how do I describe it? On the bottom right-hand part of this sculpture, of this wall hanging painting, there's that, to the extreme bottom right, there's that blue, uvula type looking shape. And then you go over to the next kind of circle, woven circle. And it's so loosely, it's kind of like a pat, I'm just going to describe it as different patches within your piece, but that particular area where it's a little turquoise blue patch within the circle, it's woven so loosely that it's almost like sagging within this piece where there's other areas of tightness. Like each area has such personality. And then I look to the bottom where you kind of what I'm just going to call it fringe, at the bottom. I looked over a little bit to the extreme left, and some of the threads, it looks like they're bleeding, and you sprayed them with water, or maybe you painted on the surface, and the detailing is getting even more interesting to me. And so it's kind of like you're loosening up and tightening up at the same time, and opening up, and there's areas once again of plexiglass for luminosity and air within the piece. So there's that green piece that's on the wall. It's in the catalog, the last piece in the catalog. It's, what is it called? Green Placebo. From that piece, which I love, to this piece, I just feel like there's been a huge shift in your work. So maybe, can you talk about what's going on?
Yeah, no, thank you. Okay, so yeah, the green piece, I think that body of work was more simple, more quiet for me. And I think my work is a journal of what's going on around me. And I think the kind of, what's the word? Well, the chaos and the dis-ease and the mismanaged, obviously the pandemic came after I made all this work, but the work is really about instability and uncertainty. And I thought, if I'm going to really talk about instability, I want the work to be unstable. And yet, yeah, they are gestural, like paintings. I work very, I'm not detailed. There's a lot of detail, and some of the detail is very tight, and some is very loose. So it's gestural, much like a painting. So some of it is fast and some is slow. And I wanted dimensions. So you have this blue piece kind of floating in the front with these things in back, these, I like what you call, they are kind of organ-like or pistules, and then you have these holes where there's this plaid piece sewn in behind the hole. So you have 4 or 5 layers, and then the plexiglass and the glass, which we'll see in the Green Placebo, is kind of like a cathedral, like the Gaudi cathedral with light coming through the dense stone wall, like light coming through density. And or like Leonard Cohen said, there's a crack in everything so that the light can get in. So it's like, that's maybe the optimism of the work, are the holes and the color and the palette, but then the energy is very frenetic and anxious and sickly sweet and dirty dazzle, as I like to call it. So yeah, so they are loose and tight. I can go on.
So another thing to talk about are your materials that you're using. Like, it seems that also there's such variation in like the quality of the line work, and that has to do with the gauge of your yarns that you're working with. So are you, like, I know this, but maybe for like people who are watching, like, how do you go about finding your materials, and what do you like? Are you a hoarder? Like, how much stuff do you have? Like, how do you do this? You have to have a lot of material and a lot of variations to do what you're doing.
I do. I've collected a lot of material in my garage, in my studio, all over my house. I just have a little story. When I grew up, my grandma was a yarn hoarder, and she had a room full of yarn, and I think I used to envy that room. And she had knit for the World War II troops, and anyway, so yes, I'm a yarn hoarder. And so you have, like, I have cotton piping that I paint with acrylic paint down here, and I have this really thick loopy mango, big huge skeins of wool, and thin hemp and thin acrylic, and tiny thin cotton, vertical warp threads, metallic threads. I really like the variety because it kind of speaks to the kind of human experience of, or the vulnerability and the kind of craziness. I do have to say, when it comes to breaking the rules, I don't think I'm supposed to be, you know, opening my warp every hour to see it loosens the warp threads, and I'm not really supposed to add this cotton piping with, you know, thin wools, because it really distresses the warp, like it makes it imperfect. And so yeah, so that's where the breaking of the rules is kind of part of my process. And again, I have the implants here. Here's an implant, and then I have the flexi implants. So the multi-materials, yeah, and chenille. I've added chenille, so there's soft kind of multi-fibers, multi-textures, like a painting.
So the other thing about your work is it's really getting large. So how you are, like, you're making pieces and sewing them together, and like, and also they're touching the floor now, and they feel, when they start touching the floor, they're becoming much more sculptural to me. So is that something that's on your mind? Like, I do think, like, your painting history and your sculpture and installation history, like, it's becoming more and more apparent in this work. They're really becoming something beyond anything I've seen before.
That's nice, thank you. No, sculpture, I come from a sculpture background, and I have always, my work has always been about color and paint, but it's very sculptural. Even my paintings came off the wall. And so these are also hung like 6 inches off the wall on brackets. So I want them floating, like having some kind of really heavy floating presence. And I do want some of them touching the floor and kind of feeling the weight of them. So yeah, so a lot of, they're getting more and more sculptural. I think so. This is, I'm just scrolling through because I know we have time. This is Your Heart is the Size of Your Fist. And this was my first, I think this is late 2019. This was my first plaid piece that I did with the weaving on top. Again, trying to layer, the more sculptural quality of layering the background and foreground. I can scroll through a little. We could talk about these. These were from a 2019, and they were kind of my response to the burning skies and the fires, and to, again, to the national kind of climate right now, of the kind of burning climate in our country, the trauma. This one says awful, kind of this awe, but it's kind of semi silhouettes of odd faces with some eyes, but it's kind of a monster, pink monster. And this one says wake up. So they're kind of, in my essay in the catalog, I talked about Sister Coretta Kent, whose work I just love. And I love that she uses abstraction and color as forms of protest with like a word in it. And so these are kind of thematic or more emotional pieces with kind of words camouflaged in them, kind of small words, not like in your face words, things that you discover as you look at them. And there's the green placebo piece that you were talking about.
Are words new to you in your work? Like when you were painting and doing, you know, more three-dimensional sculptures, were there words in your work then, or is it particular to this type of work that you employ the words?
Yeah, totally new. And words are there's a lot of artists on this call because I see a lot of friends on the Zoom. Words are really hard and they're really scary because they're like artists using words, it's a whole other world. You're kind of taking a leap. And that's why I use very small kind of, if only, like very, very ambiguous words and words that are camouflaged ins. I think it's a way of not making them so important. And yet that's kind of the meditation. A lot of them have words in them, and that's what I think about as I make them, is they're kind of a meditation on a word, like if only this is about regret, or if only we had with climate change, or if only with racial equity, like if only, you know, what if only we had not voted to put someone in office 4 years ago. So it's kind of like a regret or a question, a curiosity. So words are new, yeah.
Because when I'm looking at them and the words are in them, like it definitely does tell me that these are about something very like specific to you. Like they're not just about, you know, a visual. There's like some really heavy message that you're trying to convey, but leaving it open enough. But I think when I do see the words in your work, like it does direct my brain to thinking in a certain way about the work, about the anxiety, and the colors that you're using also, like the yellows, for me are like definitely speaking of acidic anxiety and worry. And I mean, I'm feeling that right now. And I think, yeah, I'm thinking that, you know, as a record of history, like, you know, these are how I'm feeling right now when I look at them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they're very agitated words. And even though they're simple, you know, like enough, that ENOUGH, like enough, or wake up, they're calls for myself, but also for our nation and for our world. And I think that's what the rewiring is about, is like, how do we rewire or repair trauma in our own lives and in the world? And so they become really powerful meditations, but the work is, as I call it, weaving is medicine for me. So the work is medicine. It's an antidote. They're optimistic. They're kind of offering something beside the word. So it's like, I guess, how do these things coexist? Like I did this whole elevated states of being. We have a couple images of pieces in the show, but like angry joy, or gratitude and dread, or as my friend said, grateful dread. How do you hold gratitude and dread at the same time, or anger and joy? Your heart is the size of your fist. Like, how do these opposites coexist? And I think the words help me add that dimension to the anxiety and to the color, which is joy. So they're purposefully complex and agitated, but sometimes hard, I think, to look at because they're so busy.
But they're definitely summing up, like for me, like, and I know for you, like this moment in time.
Yeah.
It's not, I don't know. I find it like personally, like for me, like right now, all I want to do is really make some like pretty work and nice work and light work. And I can't, I'm not allowed to. my psyche, my body, everything's not letting me make the work that I would love to make, because it's a reflection of what's going on right now. And I'm feeling it's hot. It's hot right now.
It's hot. In California, where I am, is burning. Climate change is real, and COVID, 200,000 people have died. Like, yeah, it's a really heavy time. And again, how do you hold that incredible heaviness? And then also the rewiring is kind of the repairing, is that we have to have some optimism. Like, I don't know if I could just do the catastrophic part or the hard part. I need to get through each day. And I think this has been a hard time for everyone here. And I can't say, I mean, there's people who have it much harder than I have, for sure. But yeah, my work is a reflection or a journaling of the climate around us. And I think it's going to get even more fiery. Yeah, there's an urgency, I think, now, and I think every artist is asking, since COVID, since Black Lives Matter, since racial equity issues and police brutality, like, we're all asking ourselves. I think abstraction is still a really powerful tool, and like, how do we do it and address that too? So maybe through color and form and emotions. Yeah. This is the green placebo. So this has the stained glass. I've done a series of pieces with stained glass embedded in them.
So how did you come to the stained glass? Is it because you teach at CCAC and you have that access, or was like, I love that when you first told me you were embedding stained glass into your work, I was like, that sounds odd, but it works so well. So like, where did that idea come to you?
It came from seeing all the cathedrals in Europe. Like, it came from those, what is it about those stained glass windows that is so amazing? Why are we so in awe of them? It's because the juxtaposition next to these solid stone architecture, really, grandiose, high and God-fearing places. And so I thought, how interesting that tapestry is soft and dense. Wouldn't it be great to have a window in them to another world? And so, yes, and I'm at CCA, and yes, I have an amazing ex-student who helps me fabric. She makes these. I designed them, and she's made them, fabricated them for me.
That's fantastic.
So I have access to stained glass. So,
after 9/11, like I'm in Manhattan, I'm Lower Manhattan. It was making work the day before, and then I went into my studio like the day after, and I was kind of like, why am I making work? It's 9/11 just happened. It's like, I should not be making work right now. I should be doing something else. But I just found, like, after getting over some of the initial shock and fear and sorrow, I felt that I really needed to work. And I think we're in that kind of space right now where, like, it's kind of our jobs as artists to be like, to record this time in history. And something that you were saying about, like, we're talking a lot about the detail in your work and trying to make, even though it's there's a lot of anxiety and energy in the work, there's always these moments of intricate and extreme beauty at the same time. Like, there's that balance of chaos and beauty. I had this idea a few years ago, and I think it might kind of sum up something about, like, why do we make these things during these, like, hard times? And I always go back to thinking about a pearl and what a pearl is. So a pearl is, it's like an irritating piece of sand or something that goes into an oyster shell, and it irritates this animal. And instead of its way of dealing with this irritant and this bother is to make something very smooth and soothing and beautiful. out of something that's really annoying to it. So I kind of feel like, you know, in a way, by making something of, you know, intensity and beauty in a time of discomfort is, it's kind of a good thing to do, like to make beauty out of something that, that's speaking about something that's difficult.
That's beautiful. I love the term. That's beautiful. Yeah, I agree. And that is not separate, and we all know that, from taking action or being part of communities or writing postcards to get out the vote. Like there's all these actionable things that we do. And I also, again, both existing and the pearl, that's so beautiful. Like, yeah, I think that the irritating, the sand, what's happening around us is very dark and kind of scary if we think about the future. And in some ways, again, our medicine is the pearl. We're making art, you know, again, a lot of artists I see out there on the Zoom and making beautiful work. And I think it's valid, you know, and it's also interesting because I think all of us have asked, or I asked, should I be doing overtly political work? And I'm doing more metaphorically political work, like they're personal work, but they're asking questions. This pause piece was made, this is the last piece I made for the show. It's about 11 feet high, 2 panels with inserts. There's a bunch of woven inserts. I was thinking about coming off the street. This is before COVID. And I was thinking like you would come into the space from a busy New York and like take a breath, breathe, pause. And what's so interesting is now in COVID, we were forced to pause in lockdown, right? We were forced to like be still and not move and pause. So yeah, that's, yeah, so this is pause. And
you made this before pause. Our pause.
You know, I think all the work was in transit during lockdown. Like California had just locked down, and I thought, is my work going to be lost in the ether somewhere in the middle of nowhere? 2 years of work, but it made it safely to the gallery, and Josie and Lily met it there, or Josie did, I can't remember which one, and made it, rested safely for many days. There's Kathy. Are you there, Kathy?
I am here. Did I go away?
That's okay. You'll come back, your image. And this is the hallway. Q has this amazing, hallway. You can see this little piece. And then these were, oh good, and we're nearing time. These 2 pieces here and over here are part of my elevated states of being. And I've been thinking a lot about hormones and happy hormones like oxytocin and serotonin and dopamine and things that make you feel good. And so I made a whole series about faces. These are 2 of a whole handful of faces. This one is angry joy. Again, the fire behind it. To like kissing yourself in a way, like a mirrored image of yourself. And then this one is singing in the rain, or sorry, not singing, singing off key. Sorry, singing off key. Or as one 5-year-old told me at the show that I had in Long Beach at the museum, he said, it looks like it's vomiting. So I thought that was funny. So it's kind of vomiting a song. So these are my only figurative pieces that I've made, overtly figurative, but it was fun making them and as small pieces, you know. I'm back. So,
should we do questions now?
Sure.
Are you?
Let me see, let me get on screen. Hello, everyone. There you are. How fun to see all these faces that I know and others. Oh, so many friends from all over the country. How exciting. And my mom. So I don't know, if anybody, we can keep talking. If anybody has any questions, you can put them in the chat.
There we are. Sorry, I lost you all for a minute. Terri, are there things, are there things about your work that you find almost, what's the word? Like, I guess in your work now, like now that you finished this body of work, like what's your next, like do you have an idea in your mind, like what's your next challenge, or does it just happen as you're drawing and weaving, like, or do you have like a next idea?
Yeah, well, since the lockdown, I've been really exploring much more actively plaid and having plaid kind of backgrounds to these shapes floating on the background. And I'm starting to design large scale works that someday I'll have a place to put them.
How large is large?
Well, I'd like to do a mural size, like kind of like the Berkeley piece, maybe not 60 feet, but maybe 30 feet across by 15 feet down, in a multi-paneled, maybe with glass and plexiglass. I'm thinking I want to do a large mural size piece. And then maybe more sculptural. I really think at some point I'm going to include sound or other something in my work, because I'm a multimedia artist. So we'll see if that happens. Oh, there's some questions. What kind of loom do you use? I use a small floor loom. It's about 46 inches across. And I'm in the process, I'm gonna acquire another loom so that I can have several going at one time. Let's see, I'm just looking at the questions. And Kathy, you can answer these too.
Okay, let's see.
I have a question. How do you define success for yourself, both in a single piece and in a broader sense? Kathy, I want to know how you define.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm like just reading all these questions. And it's funny because Corinna asked, what's your next work? So we already got that one without, without the prompt. Which one is the question?
Define success for yourself, both in a single piece and broader sense. That's a really good question, because as an artist, sometimes it feels like it's never enough. Like, what is success? So what's successful for me, I've actually got a journal, and every night I write something, what went right today, and that's success. Like, what went right? Someone reached out and asked me a question about my work, or someone, that's success. Or you know, having opportunities to exhibit. There's traditional success, right? There's sales and opportunities to exhibit, but I think success in a broader sense is really achieving the piece that I have envisioned and feeling really strong about it, no matter if it ever showed or anything, like just feeling internally good about it.
I have a question. Since you you pretty much have to do drawings and figure out your work in advance, have you ever had a piece that you've made it and then you're not satisfied and then you completely alter it after?
Yes, I have. Not often, because I do so much legwork ahead of time, and I usually will save it. It might not be my favorite piece, but I'll save it before it dies. But I have a graveyard of work rolled up that I might salvage someday, and I might not. And I throw things out. Yeah. So, but yeah, things go wrong. When I did the Berkeley piece, there were times where I had to make like 3 different panels before one actually worked. And that was a lot of work. It's like 10 days each panel. Yeah, let's see. You mentioned that you work out the idea before you begin. Do you do drawing or paintings as part of? Yeah, so I do kind of slash drawing with Sharpies and colored pencils, no paint, but I do a lot of sketches, and then I make a final piece, and then I get some Mylar or some clear acetate, and then I grit it out, and then I work in increments of 10 inches up. So then I work up through the drawing. And at that point, once I have the grid, I select all the fibers and I put them on a big, huge table that I have. And then, so it might be like 100 fibers or yarns or different things that I can use. And then I map out in the drawing, like this is metallic, this is flat, this is thick, this is, so I do all the textural mapping. What do the plans for your pieces look like? Yeah, so the plans are not to scale, the drawings, but as I'm working on panel pieces, I have huge white paper. So as I work on the next panel, I have to map out the next piece with a Sharpie in different colors and then grid that out to work on it so it lines up. They're very large, like I'll do a 10-foot piece of paper on a 10-foot next to a 10-foot panel and kind of map out, and then I measure where, yeah, there's a lot of measuring and graphing. Can you talk a little more about how you do preparation and pre-planning for your pieces? Do you use digital textile software or sketching or penning? Okay, I would love to do digital software. And I'm gonna have my 15-year-old daughter teach me how, because she knows how to do it. That is one of my next plans, to do it digitally, because it's really crazy to do. I mean, I still love the hand drawing, but I think at some point I have to move to digital.
I have another question for you, Terri. You were talking before about that you want your work to get more sculptural and more, maybe integrate sound into it. Can you like give me a visual? Like, are you talking about making 3-dimensional pieces, like freestanding in the room, or are they still gonna be on the wall?
Well, it's funny, I threw out sound kind of cavalierly. I don't know how that would work, but maybe playing next to my work, or maybe it's like a live music. Maybe, Nancy, maybe I'd have your husband playing with my work. Yeah, sound. I think sculpturally, I want them to come more off the wall, maybe stuff them so there's pregnant bellies on them, or things kind of, you know, more 3-dimensional than they are, maybe hanging in space in the middle of the room. So that's a future idea.
That sounds exciting.
Where do you store all your large work? Really good question. If there's one place that you would like to see your work permanently installed, where would it be? Oh my goodness. Wow. How about the Gaudi Cathedral?
Wow.
Like in the cathedral, that would be so cool. In Barcelona. Let's see. No, I would love it anywhere permanently installed that had people walking through, not necessarily an art audience, but people walking through, and storing my large work. Actually, I used to make really large sculpture. I have a 7-foot in diameter metal bowl in my backyard that was part of a installation that I had spun in Los Angeles. And yeah, that's hard to store, but weavings are amazing. Like, I know there's fiber people, I roll them up and I store them in a box, and now I'm outgrowing my garage and my shed and my studio, so I'm gonna have to get a storage unit. But weaving's amazing. I just shipped off to Amsterdam, and it was like one little box for a huge wall piece. And so weaving's it's not fragile. You don't have to pack it, and it's not gonna break, and it rolls really small. And so that's been really something I hadn't thought about at all, is that's kind of a great thing that's easy to ship. Terri, I have always thought of you as a reactor. You react to your life environment, your art, and others' art even without censoring yourself. Yeah, thanks, Robin. She's known me. She was the first person I met in LA, Robin Mitchell. That was 30 years ago. Yeah, I am a reactor, and I my work really reacts to whatever's around me. I think there's several unifying threads, like really interested in the body and the mind connection, the brain science, cognitive science, psychology, and the breath. So those have always, I did kinetic sculpture that were breathing and kind of about the body. So they're all very connected. So it's, yeah. Yeah. Kathy, do you have anybody else have a question?
I guess it's just more of like a question maybe that I get asked a lot. Like when you're in your studio working, you're in there alone with you and like a loom. Are you listening to public radio and getting uber like depressed like I do? Or are you listening to books on tape? Like what, or are you listening to podcasts, or are you completely silent, or do you listen to music? Like, you know, how do you set, like I find sometimes I get so lost in my work that I become unaware of the sounds like, you know, going on. Like, is that important to you? Like what you're listening to when you're working?
That's a really good question. So you listen to the news?
A lot. Yeah. I have to turn it off lately.
I used to listen to Spotify. It's, you know, different radios, like different kind of genres of music, and then I could just zone out. But lately, since the quarantine, I've been listening to a lot of podcasts, like some uplifting, like 10% Happier, Brene Brown. But I also listen to a lot of the anti-racism and kind of educational, like the 1619 project. So I've been listening to a lot of kind of more educational podcasts recently. I wish I could do books on tape, but I don't think I'd follow it, so I'd get lost, and then I wouldn't know where I would be. So I need kind of shorter segments. Yeah, I think I would be so cool for all the artists to do playlists. That's, you know, what they're listening to. Hey, Blue asked about rewiring and the concept. So rewiring is, so neuroplasticity is this idea that what fires wires. So this guy, Donald Hebbs, came up with that term that like whatever you think, like a placebo, like what you believe and what you think rewires your neural pathways. And so this idea of the loom as a wiring device of left and right, warp and weft, you know, putting through left, right. So it became a metaphor. And so I like the idea of rewiring, repairing, and also rewiring is very positive. It's kind of like when you rewire something, it's not inalterable, like you're fixing it. So this idea that rewiring is a very positive act, like you rewire your brain for more positivity or optimism, you rewire. So we're neuroplasticity, this idea of brain science and cognitive science is that we're wired for fight or flight. And so my work is an antidote to that. Like how do you rewire those thoughts for positive action and optimism? And that's why it's rewire, which is kind of funny because I think that's what we need right now with everything that's happening. It's easy to go into the despair, and rewiring is kind of fixing. It's kind of a very actionable verb. And that's why I wanted to be rewire, kind of this idea that, and I'm a very anxious person, so rewiring my anxiety has been weaving's been very helpful. That's rewire. Thanks for increasing my neuroplasticity. That's funny. Yeah.
I've been finding, like, you know, I was saying before, I was listening to a lot of like, you know, radio, the news in my studio. But I think as COVID, like the lockdown and the distance from friends and other artists has been going on for a very long time, that I am listening more and more to podcasts of artists. And I'm kind of finding like that I really need to listen to artists talk while I'm working now and hear their thoughts and how they're getting through it, but also just like their process. And I just want to plug this one amazing talk that I heard was on Art Talk. There was a discussion by Philida Barlow, and it was one of the most generous art talks I've ever heard. And it just really made me feel inspired listening to somebody talk about their creative process. So I feel like, you know, through this whole long time that we've been locked away in our studios or not in our studios, some people can't work, is that I'm feeling like the real need to talk to artists about ideas. And I'm just feeling like more now than ever, like I really need that community of camaraderie with other artists. And so is that like, are you listening to more and more podcasts right now because of that, you think?
I think so, but I am going to convert. I like your idea of listening to other artists, so I'm going to get a list from you. Maybe you can put a list in the chat. Maybe, if anybody listens, interesting, everybody, go ahead and put in the chat anything that's interesting to you, any podcasts. I'd love to collect those.
Yeah, you could do an art share.
No, I think I needed to hear voices, and I needed to hear really, like on 10% Happier, Brene Brown, they're really interviewing Sonia Renee Taylor and like really interesting, smart, interesting thought leaders in the world who have really important things, kind of have helped me through this time. I think the podcast have helped me through this time.
This is another question. Who do you have like any art heroes other than Moreau? Like who like I know for me it changes over time, like whatever, you know, I always have some steadies. Like who are people that you find utter inspiration from? Like I love Renaissance portrait painting because I love all the detailing in it. So what do you think helps to fuel you, like by looking at other people's art? Like who inspires you?
Well, you inspire me, and a lot of my friends on this call inspire me. So I think, you know, people I know seriously inspire me. And then there's dead artists like Franz West, I don't know how he's, and gosh, a lot of artists, Olafur Eliasson, I don't know how to pronounce people's last name.
Olaf Eliasson,
And I love his transparency and his the scale of his projects and just the concept. Yeah, a lot of artists, and I love Rachel Harrison's quirky sculptures. And a lot of women painters. I love abstract women painters like Joanne Greenbaum and Sarah Kane and Polly Applebaum and a lot of people. So I'm naming them because they're not on this call, so I don't want to hurt anybody's feeling. Yeah, so a lot of, really, I actually look at all of those people. I'm just learning about textile artists. I love textiles and textile artists, and that's like new for me to look at because I come from a painter's background, but so I'm learning about textiles too. And that's like Annie Albers. I love her work. And oh gosh, my mind's not working, but yeah, there's some really amazing people and living people on, yeah. Good question. Oh, wait, there's something, sorry. There's another question. Oh, look, people are writing, that's good.
Oh yeah, all right, so we are getting a good resource of podcasts to listen to.
Yeah, Liz is on the New York Textile Month website. That's cool. She just had a talk that I want to check that out. That's awesome. Into a brick and rail. Oh, Jason. Okay. That's so cool. Deep. Wow. Thank you all. That's awesome. I am always looking for new podcasts. Yeah. I want to get a, Lily, can we get a list of that? Can we copy the chat?
It's like podcast porn. Oh my God, for artists, like deep color podcast, like, oh, that sounds good.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for coming. And for those who've been able to see the show, I have not been able to see the show. I won't see the show. It's the first show I've ever had that I'm not seeing. But I'm so grateful that I have eyes in New York to see it, and that Josie and Lily worked so hard to put it up. And yeah, and the catalog is, thank you so much for the catalog. And Kathy, thank you from the bottom of my heart. It has been a highlight to become good friends with Kathy and to get her support. Your support has been amazing, and I feel so grateful.
I feel the same way.
Yeah. seeing the show. Awesome.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, Kathy and Terry. It's been really great to hear from you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Take care.
Bye, everyone.